When David Zaslav took over as the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, there were two black clouds just hanging over the company that he was going to need to address, specifically with DC characters, the DCEU, and having a successful way forward with those characters in that universe, one of them being Ezra Miller starring as the Flash, and all the legal trouble that guy was going through, and the other being Amber Heard and her ongoing trial with Johnny Depp, which absolutely destroyed her Q rating, kind of outed her as somebody that most people didn't really like, and most people wanted to see her removed from Aquaman 2. It sounds like they actually tried to do that, but that was vetoed by Elon Musk somehow. And now we're getting the fallout of all this stupid Amber Heard trouble that's going on. There's basically an expose or something like that. It's kind of like an expose. I'm not sure really what it is. Where basically Depp fans paid court fees for the release of documents from Heard's therapist, Dr. Dawn Hughes, that were part of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. And it feels like this is an accidental screw you from Amber Heard to Jason Momoa, James Wan, and everyone associated with Aquaman 2, as if that movie needed more bad headlines heading into this big opening that's happening. Hopefully everything works out, but I don't know. There just isn't a whole lot positive going around this. Let's get into some of these details. Some of them are funny. Some of them are just weird. Jason wanted me fired, the notes say. Jason, drunk, late on set, dressing like Johnny, as all the rigs do. A rep from Momoa declined comment, but a DC spokesperson pushed back on Heard's characterization, saying Jason Momoa conducted himself in a professional manner at all times on the set of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Others echoed that sentiment. Jason works his ass off, likes to have a beer once in a while like everyone, but doesn't show up drunk on set, said an insider who was on the London set in 2021, adding that the two stars got along when they were seen joking together, and he isn't dressing like Johnny Depp. He is always dressed in that bohemian style. It doesn't sound like that likely happened. Obviously, that's how Amber Heard interpreted it, and then paid it forward to the therapist when she was talking to him, but you know, Jason Momoa seems like a pretty chill, laid-back guy. I could see him having a drink on set, you know, having a beer or whatever to celebrate, or maybe even just with lunch or whatever. It just feels like it would be out of character for him to just get blitzed, dress up like Johnny Depp with all his rings and everything, you know, with the little fucking hat and the stupid glasses that Johnny Depp wears. It's like, yeah, we're going to need to fire Amber Heard. And I imagine at the time she probably felt like she was under a pretty enormous spotlight. Things were already taking a turn for the worse for Amber Heard. People were already starting to realize that maybe she wasn't quite the victim that she had portrayed herself in other court hearings. And the truth was likely to come out in this civil trial. And I imagine Amber Heard was seeing a lot of things that might not even have been there. But this one's pretty funny. I got to admit, just like imagining Jason Momoa like showing up on set acting like Jack Sparrow, like trying to get Amber Heard fired. But if I were Jason Momoa and I was the star of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and I had zero chemistry with Amber Heard in the first film, and then everything that had happened in between, and you had the big public specter of this trial that was going to go on, and remember seeing Walter Hamada like on the stand via Zoom and how weird and uncomfortable that was, I probably wouldn't have minded if she got fired either. I don't know if I would have asked for it because that's not the nicest thing in the world to do, but I don't think it would have been like out of bounds for him to do so. He is the star of the movie, and Aquaman is the biggest movie that he's ever been a part of, and that's one of the roles that he's really known for. I'll be like, hey, can we get rid of the dead weight and a really bad wig or whatever? Because it's not really adding anything to the accoutrement of the movie here. And in fact, it's adding a whole lot of dead weight like an anchor on the film, and we're not getting a lot of positive headlines. So I wouldn't have blamed Jason Momoa for asking them to fire Amber Heard. I don't know that it actually happened, but I severely doubt that he just got like shit-faced, showed up acting like Jack Sparrow with Johnny Depp's stupid glasses and rings on, calling for her to be fired on set. But apparently that's how Amber Heard took that one. That's not the only person that Amber Heard did not appreciate on the set of Aquaman 2. The therapy session also painted a picture of Heard feeling unsupported by the film's director, James Wan, and treated like a pariah because of her high-profile legal battle with her ex-husband. He raised his voice at me. I can't even post about Aquaman, made it like it was my fault, said I'm sorry, says Hughes notes in reference to Wan. Nobody could take selfies with me on set given the blackout. Wan declined comment, although a DC spokesperson says James is known for treating members of his cast and crew with the utmost respect and for fostering a positive collaborative environment on set. The Aquaman films were no exception. The director of the movie that you're starring in or co-starring in raised his voice at you. I don't know. That sounds pretty normal. There's a blackout on the movie. Stop talking about it. We actually don't want you to drop spoilers or any hints about any of the other people or the sets or the characters that are involved in the production. We would like to have not everything spoiled. So yes, also don't take selfies with everybody around so they can see, costumes and things in the background and get an idea of maybe some of the big plot points. So it doesn't feel like James Wan was out of line. It sounds like he was just being a director. He was being a boss, somebody that was in charge of the production and saying, hey, can you stop posting about the movie because we don't want spoilers to get out? Stop taking selfies with everybody and putting it on social media because you're actually adding spoilers that way. And yes, I will raise my voice if I feel like I need to really emphasize something. As in, I'm the director here and I'm the director on the set. And it's certainly in his purview to raise his voice with the people underneath him when he needs them to hear him. It sounds like Amber Heard probably wasn't hearing him. And she was, quite frankly, a pariah on set. Aquaman is the highest grossing DC film in the history of the world. What are they going to do with the sequel? They're all talking about Amber Heard. And why haven't Warner Brothers Discovery fired her yet? How big is her role going to be? How much did they actually scale it back? Did they remove all their scenes? Apparently they removed 2 big scenes. I guess an action scene with her fighting Black Manta. Nobody really wanted to see that. And then a love scene with Jason Mamoa. And he probably didn't even want to film that. So it's probably just to get that stuff out of there. There was no chemistry ever between Jason Momoa and Amber Heard. Sometimes you shoot for the stars and you just miss, and it never really works out. And on-screen chemistry is really important. Go see the prequel trilogy with Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman's a great actress. No chemistry whatsoever with Anakin Skywalker in that movie. And it was actually to the detriment of the film. They probably should have just cut all those scenes out too. If you want to watch the second movie and you actually want to enjoy it, anytime Anakin and Padme are on the screen together, you just hit next scene on your Blu-ray player or your DVD player. You skip to the next one, and the movie's actually fine to watch. It's just their chemistry absolutely ruins things, and it certainly didn't help the Aquaman movie as well, and I don't think anybody was looking forward to it in Aquaman 2. The drama is being rehashed at a time when DC Entertainment toppers James Gunn and Peter Safran are poised to close the book on previous regime superhero slate with the December 20th release of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Since Warner Brothers chief Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca joined the studio in June 2022, followed by Gunn and Safran's entrance 4 months later, the four have been saddled with DC duds, including this year's The Flash and Blue Beetle. Still, the Aquaman sequel held promise considering the character's first outing earned $1.15 billion worldwide, becoming the highest grossing DC movie ever. But sources say the sequel has endured challenges outside of the Heard saga and was testing in the 60s before being recut in the summer of 2022. Despite the overhaul, the film continued to test in the 60s, prompting a new cut. And that certainly falls in line with all the things that we've heard about this very troubled production. It's reportedly had a record number of reshoots. It's had 3 sets of reshoots, which really is unprecedented. Not a good sign there. People were actually walking out of the test screenings themselves. When you have somebody walking out of a free movie, that's probably not a very good sign. And yes, there have been a lot of duds. I guess there is a silver lining on this one because they do say, in the article that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is projected to do as well as Aquaman on its opening weekend, but that's domestic projections. And if you actually look at Aquaman's domestic numbers, they're actually really average and below average compared to their MCU counterparts, especially the ones that went over $1 billion worldwide. It's kind of an anomaly. They actually did so well, specifically in Asia and China, that it propped the movie up and made it go over $1 billion. But DC has not been very successful in China as of late. In fact, I think The Flash might have done $35 million compared to $250 million, I think, for Aquaman. So just replicating the domestic numbers for Aquaman and Lost Kingdom compared to Aquaman probably isn't going to be enough. Well, it definitely won't be enough. But just those numbers alone won't automatically equal success. They're probably going to have to do more than that. A lot more than that overseas. And we'll see how those things track out over the long haul, but it's not looking good. And it's certainly not been a banner year for James Gunn, Peter Safran, David Zaslav, everybody at Warner Brothers Discovery, DC Studios. These aren't their movies, but James Gunn did say The Flash is one of the best superhero movies he's ever seen in his life. He also said the star of Blue Beetle was the first official DCU character, probably not a very smart move. They kind of trashed The Rock because of the underperformance of Black Adam, but in retrospect, it actually overperformed in comparison to the other DC movies that were going out there. So they definitely need a win, something good to happen, some positivity to surround the new DCU, DC Studios, James Gunn, Peter Safran, And you would hope, I mean, obviously Aquaman 2 was going to be the best shot at it, but there's been just so much drama and just so much, I don't know, ickiness going around it. That it's probably going to be hard to achieve that. But if the movie's good, I think people will support it because they definitely supported the first movie. Some on the lot are convinced that another company, most likely Universal, will buy Warner Brothers within 2 years, making recent DC subplots and upheavals feel quaint. The bottom line is they need to get DC to work, whether Zaslav owns it, whether Brian Roberts owns it, whether somebody else owns it, says Lightshed's Rich Greenfield, a Wall Street analyst and venture capitalist. In the run-up to the Aquaman sequel, Warner Brothers will outwardly back the film and hope for a China release like its Barbie, The Flash, and Shazam! Fury of the Gods received. And when it says they hope for a China release, they're just hoping the movie releases in China. They're not actually hoping for the numbers that Barbie, The Flash, or Shazam! Fury of the Gods actually generated in China because they were actually substandard. They're hoping for much more than that, but they will never achieve that if the film actually doesn't release in China. So they're hoping that that does happen. And perhaps they can get a big win out of this. Maybe the ball starts rolling, Creature Commandos, maybe people like that. Superman Legacy does good. And next thing you know, DC isn't the dead property that it is now. And then when they go to sell Warner Brothers off, which has basically been rumored since Warner Brothers Discovery became a thing, it will actually be worth a whole lot more money because you have this nice, big, thriving property, which it absolutely is not right now. When you think about DC Studios, DC characters, DC movies, over the past 2 or 3 years, it's an absolute albatross. It's just hanging around the neck of the studio and just losing them more and more money over time, even though they keep investing more time, money, infrastructure, logistics, everything into it to get it right. But it doesn't seem like it's working at all. But we haven't gotten into the James Gunn version of the DCU yet. But I do think they're probably in a lot of trouble, and it's going to be hard to turn people's opinions around on the characters, not to mention the fact that it feels like in many ways like the superhero bubble is probably burst and it'll probably never be guaranteed billion-dollar movies time and time again. It might only be associated with those really high prestige like A-list characters like your Spider-Man, maybe X-Men, Batman, perhaps even Superman. But a Guardians of the Galaxy probably never happens again where it comes out, and I think it does 650 million, maybe something like that. Maybe you never get a Black Panther again where it does $1 billion. Maybe you never get a Captain Marvel again where that character does $1 billion because there just isn't the interest. But when you do have a character like a Spider-Man or a Batman or maybe even a Joker, the Joker movie did $1 billion, you can still make a lot of money as long as you make a good movie. And that's kind of where we are right now. But we shall see what happens with Aquaman 2. But it appears Amber Heard, on accident, gave her final screw you to Jason Momoa, James Wan, Aquaman, DC fans or whatever, who certainly didn't support and back her. Some of that stuff is pretty eye-roll worthy, if you ask me. Now, I did mention earlier in the video that people were walking out of the test screenings, and I'm pretty sure I know why. There's a lot of rumors about this, all but confirming there was a really bad scene, at least in the initial cut of the movie, that absolutely drove people nuts, and they walked out of the film because it was so heinous. Definitely check this out if you haven't seen it yet. There's also a link in the video description.